Let's talk 1031 exchanges. This was something I didn't know was out there for so long. I wish I would have known about this because this has been around for quite a while. But I started buying real estate when I was still in college. I was 26 years old when I bought my first property. And when I moved from my college town, University of Florida, go Gators. If you guys could see my mug, I don't know, but it has Gator on it. When I moved from there to Orlando, I sold that property and bought a new one. I turned it into rental property, moved, and then we sold it. And anyway, nonetheless, I eventually sold properties, bought new rental properties, and I did that every time I moved. I would keep one property, but eventually sell it and buy more rental properties. But I was paying the taxes on those sales because I didn't know there was another option. But I was still happy because I still got the appreciation. I was still making more money and I was putting it into bigger property the next time. But I kept trading up while paying the taxes. Had I known I could have done it without paying the taxes, I could have stepped up to much bigger properties much faster. And that's what a 1031 exchange will let you do. So it's in the IRS code under section 1031. So that's where it gets its name. But people call it like kind because basically it is exchanging one kind of thing for another thing. So this is real estate for real estate. It doesn't have to be a single family home for a single family home or a duplex for a duplex. It can be any kind of real estate for any kind of real estate, pretty much. There may be a few exclusions in there, but if you want to trade from single family homes to quadplex to an apartment complex to a hotel, you can do that. And what happens is every time you just roll the taxes into the next purchase, right? You just defer those taxes to the next property and you just keep on deferring. And just as we saw with the last example, deferring that is really powerful because then you get to keep that extra money and so you have a bigger down payment for your next investment, or you can go invest it in something else, right? So you can keep that money growing. So deferring is really powerful. It is deferred. You have pushed the can down the road. It doesn't go away, but it could maybe get deferred forever. And we'll talk about how that happens. But yeah, so let me see if there's anything else on here I wanted to be. And some people, let me just go through the bullet points here, make sure I don't miss anything. You do have very specific timeline for doing this, and it's really important that you adhere to this. From the time you sell your property, you have 45 days to identify what you're going to replace it with. If you miss that window, you cannot go forward with your 1031 exchange. Then you have 180 days to close. Well, you have a total of 180 days to close. If it's 181 days, you've missed your 1031 exchange. This can be stressful. I have literally come down to 24 hours on this. This is very stressful. And you don't want to get into a bad deal just because you're in a timeline. So really, you need to plan this out and be thinking about this in advance. You should always try to buy up. Buy something more expensive, something bigger, something that's going to yield higher returns for you. You can buy the same or less, but then you have to pay the taxes on the difference, right? So it's more advantageous to buy up. And that's kind of why people do this in the first place. And this is super important. If you remember nothing else, remember that you cannot touch the money. You must work through a qualified intermediary. So if you're planning on doing this, you want to reach out and contact them in advance, and they will make sure you don't miss these timelines. They will work with you to plan this out, right? If you sell the property and you get the funds and then you say you want to go do a 1031 exchange, it is too late. So you cannot touch that money. It must go through them from the very beginning. So super important there. The title has to be in the same name. So if I bought the original property in my personal name, whatever I buy next has to be in my personal name. Now, there are ways to maybe change it later while you're owning that. If it's put into an LLC that it's a pass-through entity that still goes to you, you might be able to do that. But you can't go from your personal name to an LLC that maybe has other people involved in it as well. You cannot do that. So sometimes when people are wanting to do 1031 exchange, maybe they're getting up there in age, they don't want to be managing properties anymore. So they want to go into a syndication to invest passively. And we'll talk more about syndications in a little bit. But they want to do that with a 1031 exchange. You can do that, but it is more difficult because of this titling issue. So then you have to come in what's called a tenant in common. And basically, you're not investing on the LP side in the same way that the other investors are. And it is costly. You have to set this up through an attorney. So the syndication sponsor may not be willing to do that unless you're bringing in a big sum of money, probably $1 million or more. It may not be worth their time unless they already have a tenant in common there and they've already done that paperwork. Then you might be able to piggyback on that. But again, this is why I say it gets into some planning. You need to really work through that with your CPA and with your qualified intermediary. But since I mentioned syndication, I do want to let you know what that is in case you're not familiar with that term, because it will come up again. But essentially, what it is, it's when a group of investors pool their money to invest in something bigger than they could each buy individually. And then they get the economies of scale that make real estate more profitable, right? Because they're just buying something big. When the property is managed by a group of professionals like that who really know what they're doing and they have access to um, lower cost, everything. We'll get into the details of it, but basically that's what it is. You're just pooling your monies with other investors, and of course, the biggest investor is always the bank, right? And then you have real estate professionals doing the day-to-day business of it, so you don't have to. That's essentially what a syndication is. If you want to connect with me, you can do that through my website here. My link tree is also on here. You can hook up with me on social media or whatever you want. On my website, I do also offer a lot of, like, I have sample deals on there of past deals we've done. If you want to start looking at some of these deals and how they work out and the types of returns you can expect, all of that will be on the website. So feel free to do that. I've also got a bunch of stuff on YouTube and all the social media things. So.